So I literally packed up everything I owned. My grandparents were very helpful, and I just drove to Arizona. I got 3 roommates in Ahwatukee and moved to Arizona. I didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody.
Welcome to episode 74 of The Real Deal. I am your host, Janine Igliani, with my co-host, Ryan Hatcher.
What's up, guys?
And our guest today is Angela Kiernan. Angela is a dear friend of mine, but she's also an amazing title rep. And I think you are one of the best in the business, Angela. So thanks for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, this will be fun. We were just kind of talking before we got started. You have a really awesome story, and I think it'd be really cool for people to hear kind of where you grew up, what that was like, and how you got to be where you are today. So let's get to know the Angela behind this beautiful facade that you have, which is awesome because you are gorgeous.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
But tell us about yourself.
So how far do you want to go back?
I think you go to the beginning because I think your whole story is awesome.
What's good?
What's good?
Yeah, tell us.
Oh my gosh, Ryan, you've never heard this, right?
I haven't, so I'm super curious.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I know you're very successful. And we were just talking about this the other day, actually. And most successful people have come from tough stuff sometimes.
Yeah, right? I do think that is true. It's interesting, Janine. I haven't talked about this in a long time, and you and I talked about this, and it's crazy because I think early on we talked about it a lot, and then time goes on and you don't talk about it as much anymore. So,
but also like kind of what we were talking about earlier too, to see you so successful, so put together, so like in charge and on top of things, you would never know that was your life before. So it's like very inspiring that you can overcome and do amazing things.
Well, thank you. Let's dive in.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll go back to the very beginning. So I was raised, as you guys know, or you know, by both sets of my grandparents. I grew up in the Midwest, a little town outside of St. Louis, what's actually known as East St. Louis. And there is a town called Fairmont City. And then I went to Collinsville High School. But I grew up in this town called Fairmont City. And growing up, I was raised by one set of my grandparents until I was about 6 years old. And then another set of my grandparents. And it's not because I didn't have parents, but my parents were just maybe needed a little help, right? And so I was 7 years old, and we're going way back, but I was 7 years old and I received, I don't know how old, well, I know how old you are, but I received what's called a chain letter in the mail.
Mm-hmm. I
remember those. And I got this letter in the mail, and it said, I started to read it, and it said, "Dear Angie Mitchell," which is a maiden name. I was previously married. And it said, Steve and Nancy Mitchell are not your parents, but you belong to an attorney. And as I got that sentence out of my mouth, my grandma ripped the letter out of my hand. And this was the, awakening that these people were not my family, right? And I immediately started crying. She picked up the phone, called my dad, who at that time I thought was my dad, and said, "You need to come here." She called my mom and then called my other set of grandparents and said, "Come over here right now. We need to tell her what's going on." And so I found out at that point that I had been adopted, which I thought these people were my family my whole life. A lot of people are adopted. This really isn't the big deal. However, so Steve, Nancy tell me, not only were they not raising me, my grandparents are raising me up to this point, that I had been adopted by, that I had been adopted. And they tell me this story that Nancy was never able to have children, and that they had adopted me, that she was not able to have kids, and that the doctor had suggested that they adopt me from this woman who was a young woman and wanted to give her baby up for adoption. So this is the story that I grow to believe for years and years. Fast forward till, I'm 13 years old, and my grandma dies. And then when I'm 16 years old, my grandpa dies. So now I'm all alone because Steve has got his own family, Nancy has her own family. So the other grandparents come back into the picture and help me get legally emancipated at this point.
What does that mean?
Legally emancipated is when you, well, I'm 16 at this point, so in the state of Illinois, which is where I'm living, which is right outside of East St. Louis, you technically have to be 17. So I'm kind of living on my own for the 4 months until I become 17. I'm living between friends, right? And so my other grandparents are living in Florida. So my grandparents come from Florida when I turned 17 and helped me get legally emancipated, which means that you can live on your own as the legal adult at the age of 17. So I get an apartment, I go to high school, I live as an adult to be a senior in high school. I now have 3 jobs, living as an adult in high school to finish out my senior year.
Did anybody else around you know this? Like, did your friends know? Did you?
Yeah, like my close friends knew, right? The crazy thing is that it's so crazy because I remember this, and it was so embarrassing at the time, but I was getting $97 from the state of Illinois because my grandfather had died and they were my legal guardians. So I was getting $97 to help me pay my bills.
Per month?
Per month from the state of Illinois. So $97. I was living on my own. I was doing some program at school. I don't know, I think they still do this for kids now to where you could go to school at 5 a.m. and leave at like 10:30 or 11. It was some co-op program. I was working at a job that paid me, I think, $5 an hour, which obviously back then $5 an hour was something, right? And then I was bartending. And my friends who did know were, so back then my friends were allowing me to bartend on Thursdays and Saturdays. And I was making, some money bartending. And then I was also working at a golf course too during the day, driving the beer cart. Wow. So I was working crazy amounts of hours just to pay my bills, just to make money. And my grandparents were also helpful, but then I was able to get a scholarship and a grant to go to college, when I graduated high school, go to school, and that's kind of how it started. I mean, I was living on my own, going to high school, paying my own bills, and so fast forward, my friend's mom, Pauletta, who ironically enough, my girlfriend Tiffany, she lives out here now in Desert Ridge. She was constantly trying to help me find my birth parents. And with no such luck, right? I mean, this is, I want to say 1998, 1999, something like that. We didn't have the capability that we do now. And so I put myself through college. And then when I turned 21, 22, something like that, graduated college, we just didn't have the, things just weren't the way that they are now. So you kind of always are who you are in the Midwest. You kind of always are. I just didn't have the family name. I just didn't have the ability to do the things there that I did somewhere else. So I just decided I'm going to move to Arizona. So, I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, right? It sounds like I didn't know anyone out here. I didn't know if the opportunity was going to be here. So I just packed up everything that I had and I said, I'm going to move to Arizona. I worked at this golf course. Like I said, I was working 3 different jobs. And I said, I'm going to move to Arizona. Some lady at this golf course, she said, you need to move. You have to get out of here or else you're going to end up barefoot and pregnant. I mean, that's exactly what she said to me. She said, there really isn't a lot of opportunity here for you. And I said, well, where should I go? And she said, you have to go west. And I said, California? And she said, no, Arizona. It's new, it's cheaper, you can afford Arizona. And I said, okay. So I literally packed up everything I owned. My grandparents were very helpful. And I just drove to Arizona. I got 3 roommates in Ahwatukee and moved to Arizona. I didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody.
What year was that?
2001.
So how did you find the roommates?
Ironically, online. And online wasn't a thing back then,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was just, I just got online and found roommates and moved out here. And it was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
And then I met someone, and it sounds really crazy, but I met someone in a bar that I was working at because I always just had multiple. I worked in a bar in Ahwatukee because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know, should I move to Scottsdale? Should I move? I looked at multiple apartments. I met someone in a bar who happened to be in real estate. And he said, you should get your real estate license. Isn't that what everyone, you should get your real estate license. And I said, okay, sure. So this guy paid for me to get my real estate license. It ended up being a man named Steve Heinen, who his son works with me today, Jason Heinen. And I said, okay, I'll get my real estate license. So I got my real estate license. It ended up not being for me, but I was living in this home with these 3 or 4 other people. I couldn't tell you now. That was however many years ago. And while I was getting my real estate license, I'm living in the home with these other people. And this is the craziest story. I'm in the shower. And so while I'm taking a shower, I get out of the shower in my bathrobe, towel, we all take showers. And I walk to the end of the hall, and there's a man in my house. And this man holds up his business card like he's a police officer. And I said, who are you and why are you in my home? Well, the home happened to be on the market. The people we were renting from were selling the home. And he looked at me and he said, I'm Chris Meyer. I'm with Realty Executives. And I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm previewing the home. And I said, what does that even mean? Where are your clients?
Yeah.
And he said, I said, go stand at the end of the stairs. And he said, what's your name? And I said, I'm Angela. And he said, I said, why does that matter? And he said, what do you do for a living? And at the time I was doing, I was working for this company called IBM with Direct Alliance Corporation in Tempe. I'm working at the bar, I'm working at the golf course, I'm trying to make it. And I said, and I'm getting my real estate license. And he said, well, why don't you come work for me? I said, I don't even know you.
Yeah.
And he said, I said, Steve Heinen is paying for me to get my real estate license. And he said, okay, well, I'll pay him back. You come work for me. And I said, hold on.
Yeah.
And so he goes, where are you from? And I said, St. Louis. And he said, I'm from St. Louis. And I said, well, I'm actually from Collinsville, Illinois. He said, I'm from Edwardsville. So I ended up having lunch with him 2 days later, working with Chris Meyer, worked with Chris for a little bit. And I still consider Chris a very good friend to this day. And that's how I got into the title business.
That's cool. That's a lot. And those like ebbs and flows create who we are. But I see how your story has given you like such grit to like persevere and to be headstrong. You're super determined. And I really love that. I want to catch up to I shouldn't even say catch up, really to 12 years ago when you and I met. When I got my real estate license, my dad said to me, you need to meet with this girl. I was brand new. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what to do. I was like, yeah, sure. And sat down with you in your office. And I remember I was like so impressed with you. I thought, oh, this is like a businesswoman. Like I want to be like her, but you helped me with so many ideas and kind of mapped out like what we could do, what a partnership almost would look like how you could help support me in growing my business. And I left there like so pumped. And that's why to this day, I'll tell any new agent that they need to sit down and meet with you so that you can help them. I think what you're really good at is kind of getting to know the person. What are their interests? What do they like? And then helping them find a pathway in their business that's going to bring them to success. So
I love that. And I think one thing that I've always prided myself on is that, and I always say this, we don't product puke on people. We like to take a more consultative approach because it's not one size fits all.
totally.
And so we don't like to, it's not about the shiny object. It's really not about the latest and greatest.
Right.
Janine, you've always been a farmer, right? So you're not going to, if I have the latest and greatest tool, I'm not going to call you and say, we have this latest and greatest tool, because I know what your business is all about.
Yeah.
And, you may know that we have it, and if you're interested in it, that's great. But it's not one size fits all.
Totally. And in real estate, there's so many different ways to build your business. And, a lot of people are big on cold calling. That's not who we are, right?
No.
It doesn't mean that that's not a viable way to build your business. There's agents that are like uber successful doing that. And you can help them if that's their business model. If you want to farm, you can do that. If you're strictly referral, repeat based, you can help them with that. But I think anybody should take the time to sit down and meet with you. And then don't take this wrong way, but like take advantage of all that you offer.
I think so too.
Right.
And I appreciate that you say that they should sit down and meet with us, but I would agree that we can do a lot for them. And one thing that I've always prided myself on, and I think this too, is we are really good at connecting people and saying, hey, I think this person might be good at working with you. This person might be a good asset on your team. This might be a great vendor partnership for you.
Yeah.
And like I said, just because we have a certain tool doesn't mean it's going to be good for you. We aren't good cold callers either.
Totally.
But we're really good at connections and very good at making sure that people know what we can do for them and what we can offer for them.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know exactly what you do and what you're talking about, what part of real estate can you help with the most? For somebody that's brand new.
I think we can help with all parts of real estate. I had someone call me the other day and say, I'm an investor. How can you help with my business? So we can connect them with even wholesalers, right? So we offer lots of different services. So for example, we are primarily in the title businesses or the title services. But for example, if I had an investor call me the other day and say, I'm looking to buy properties. So I'm going to connect them with different wholesalers. I'm going to connect them with different maybe lists where they can connect with, cash buyers, different things like that. It just depends on what they're looking for, right? So,
And especially the marketing side, right?
oh, absolutely, marketing.
To me, that's the biggest part, especially for a new agent.
Oh, big time.
Because they don't usually have a ton of banks sitting around.
Any resources that can help you with your business, no matter who you are and what aspect of the real estate business that you are, we can help with that. So, for example, even home warranty people call me all the time and say, how can you help me with this? We're definitely going to be a connector for them.
Yeah, because she always talks about when Janine started, she was printing off
Black and
white with a rubber band, right? And that's super inexpensive. And you guys have ways to help us do it inexpensively, right? Especially to get started.
Even, something as simple as if you need a bulk mail permit. Something that simple. Even if you need to do, I'm just trying to think of different things.
Even like designing, what should it look like,
What is my brand?
What is your brand? What is your logo creation? All the way as in depth as, do you need a new CRM? Do you need us to add AI bots to your CRM? We're getting that intricate right now. It's insane.
And apps.
Right. Oh my gosh, crazy.
Yeah. Can you explain in simple terms, what is it? What is title? What is escrow? What does all of that look like?
So
here in Arizona specifically, right? Because it's different in different places across the country too.
So we are a title company who we make sure that you have clear title, right? And with so much fraud right now, we want to make sure that if you're closing a real estate transaction, that your title is free and clear. We also are your settlement services provider. So we are title and escrow. In other parts of the country, you may not have title and escrow. So we are We are your title and escrow, so your settlement services provider. So we are going to facilitate all the paperwork in the real estate
Sale,
closing,
yeah.
real estate sale, real estate closing process.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's important. You know, I had somebody call me and said, oh, my dad heard this ad online about title theft or whatever. Like, what can he do? Should he pay for this service? And I said, well, I can pull it up and check for you.
Right.
Right. And so I said, just call me anytime. I'm happy to do that. But that is a real thing.
Oh,
We've
it is.
had a big uptick in people calling us saying, hey, I own this land.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I want you to sell it for me, and we can just sell it cheap because I need to get it sold. And come to find out they're not the owners. They totally lied and were fraudulent throughout the process. And there's been times where it's gotten close. I've heard agents where they've gotten all the way to the finish line and come to find out, oh no, this isn't the real owner.
Big time.
Yeah.
We're seeing so much of that right now. I mean, so much of that. And there's so much, I mean, not to get too much into the AI right now, but you can probably get on social media right now and see that they are actually trying to utilize the Ron Mobile Notary, where they're actually doing videos of the fraudulent person, and then the escrow officer is saying, can you raise your hand?
Yes.
Can you scratch your head? Can you do something? And then they're actually not able to do
Oh
it.
my gosh.
It's huge right now.
That's
Fraud
crazy.
is huge.
A couple of years ago, I sold a house for a lady. She was 87 years old, and she was complaining about having to deal with the title company, and it was Magnus too. And it wasn't because of the service; it was
Oh, yeah.
because she said when I was young, we would handshake, and that's how the
Yeah.
deal was done. And
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
yeah, not anymore. And that's why.
Yeah.
Because there's too many things that go wrong or issues that happen, so it has to be done.
It's very scary because a lot of people, and I'm seeing this not necessarily from us, a lot of people who understand that the fraud is really a big deal. They understand why we take the extra precautions to sign into this, do this, you know, why we
Encrypted
ask.
emails and all that.
Correct. And I really do appreciate agents like yourself that explain that to their client. But then we do have some people that say, well, my title company just uses a Google Doc form. And that's okay, as long as you understand the exposure that you're putting your client
Right.
in there. I mean, this is a big deal.
It is a big deal. And to me, this is why I fight so hard to work with you guys on all my transactions, because this process, there are so many things that could go awry. And having great relationships and working with people that I've worked with before that I know are really good at what they do is going to help so much in that process. For example, I have a client this weekend. She called me Saturday morning, or no, I'm sorry. She texted me like 10:30 Friday night. She's like, I know it's late. I'm just freaking out. My ex-husband, who we claimed off the deed, is leaving to go out of the country. And I just want to make sure that nothing's going to come up on the sale of the home. And she's like, I know they're probably closed over the weekend. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, well, I have Claire's cell phone number. So let me just make sure. I always just assume you guys have all of my files. And she's like, we don't have that one. I'm like, oh, darn. So trying to get a hold of this other company, of course I couldn't get a hold of them over the weekend. I even called the agent who, it was her, obviously her preferred title company. She couldn't get a hold of anybody. Meanwhile, I called Claire, she answered. First thing, she answered my phone call. And I was just like, oh, this is just another reminder why it's so important to, as often as I possibly can,
Same here.
have you guys on it, because I know those questions. And so my poor client had to stress all weekend thinking she's going to be screwed until we got an answer from them Monday. And she's fine, but just even having that assurance.
We say
know?
this all the time, just like realtors, not all realtors are created equal, right? Neither are the title companies. And the level of service, the communication. I mean, even something simple, like if I'm representing the buyer, can you send me the settlement statement before you send it out? Because there's probably something that needs to be checked, right?
Correct.
And it doesn't happen most of the time. It drives me crazy.
If it's on another company.
If it's on another one, right? But Magnus does every single time.
Yeah.
Correct.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's very interesting right now. And I know that there was a situation, there is still a situation to where they're trying to say that, different regulatory agencies are trying to say that title companies aren't necessary and that So that's something that we're going to see more and more.
Isn't that like everything they're trying to get rid of us? Everything they want to automate as much as they possibly can.
Sure.
It feels like there's just like an all-out attack.
Yeah, I just went to a conference last week, and we don't really have to talk too much on that, but I went to a conference where they were trying to say that the title company is an unnecessary. You guys went through that as well. And I just thought about all the different instances of fraud that we personally, and not even other title companies, have seen in the last, 6 months to a year. And I was wondering, gosh, how would that work out?
Right.
So,
right. How would that play out? Yeah. I think technology and AI is great, but there's something that makes it so different when it comes to buying or selling, which is usually one of people's biggest financial moves, right, in their life,
Absolutely.
right? And they don't do it all the time, maybe a handful of times. So having somebody that can guide them through that process, that can help them with what to look out for, what pitfalls, make sure their financial interests are protected. I think that is so valuable. And you don't realize it until you get in that situation, like how important that is.
I agree with you 100%. The technology, all of that is great. And one of the reasons that we need to know so much about it is for these reasons, right? Because as much good as it does just as much bad.
Totally.
And so I agree with you 100%. That's why we have to know so much about it, because just like I said earlier, the raising of the hand, the touching of the nose, how would that's crazy. When you see these videos online, people wouldn't even know to ask those questions if they weren't well versed in it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's so scary. How devastating would that be, right? To find out that you sold a house inadvertently just because you fell for some sort of AI.
Oh, it's crazy.
Right? That would be devastating.
100%.
We were talking yesterday about wanting to put together a seminar for seniors.
Yeah.
And one of the recommendations that came up was like scam alerts.
Yes.
Because seniors, unfortunately, tend to be the most vulnerable.
Yes.
Because they're just unaware.
Oh, yeah.
And people tend to target them and take advantage of them. So it's like, how do we help them become aware of what's out there? My husband told a story of one of his fire captain's dads got scammed out of $50,000 because he thought his bank was calling him to verify, and it was so-and-so fraudulent person, and he gave all of his bank info and then
so scary.
Lost it, and they wouldn't give it back to him because they were like, well, you gave the info. And he's like, but I thought it was, so that's
it is
devastating.
Such a great idea, though.
Right?
It really is such a great idea.
So
I feel like they are so vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you know when we do that.
Yeah, we'd love to be a part of that. So,
Angela, in your experience, because you work with a variety of agents and you've been doing this for a lengthy amount of time, so you've seen the good and the bad.
Oh yeah.
What do you think separates the good agents from the bad ones?
Gosh, that's a loaded question. I think the good from the bad agents, to be honest with you, one word that I could use is being preparedness.
Oh, okay.
Yes. On all aspects. And I'll just give you, I don't even have to really give you an example, but the best agents are prepared for everything. Everything. They're prepared for their appointments. They're prepared for their team. They're prepared for their events. And that's what I see. They're prepared for their closings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what I mean by that.
Well, and I could totally see how, from your perspective, right, talking to agents that have no idea what they're talking about, what they're doing, versus the ones that do.
Correct.
And it's also scary. We work with those agents on the cross-sale side, and it's really scary. And I always genuinely feel bad for their clients, because that misrepresentation is always ultimately going to cost that client something, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's frustration,
heartache,
from not being prepared, not fully understanding what they're doing. I will remember this. This is embarrassing when this happened. My very first deal that I did by myself, I represented the buyer, and I'm talking to the agent, and I think it was like the day before closing, and she's like, when will docs be at title? I was like, okay, what docs? Docs. And I was like, which one? Like, which one is it that you need? She meant like the closing documents.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I had no idea. And the lender was totally behind, and it ended up delaying closing because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I tried. But,
and it happens.
I learned.
We all have to start somewhere.
100%. We do. But even
I wish I could find that agent, by the way, now and be like, I will always remember that. I felt so bad too.
you probably could. I could probably go back and
No,
tell
right?
you who the agent
That would
was.
be awesome. We actually should totally do that. I'm gonna make a note.
You make a note, and I'll go back and look that up
I know
for
what
you.
I'm doing now.
Right?
Right? But truthfully, that is the honest to God truth, because I can always tell a really good agent if I have someone who's calling me the day before an open house and telling me everything that they need,
Right.
and then it's the morning of the open house and they're calling me and, you know, making that my problem.
Right.
So it speaks volumes.
Yeah.
But if I'm getting emails from your team
Right.
and you, and it's a week in advance,
Yeah.
and everything is, you know, being prepared a week in advance or even more in advance, that tells me a good agent versus a not so great agent.
Yeah, it's just processes and systems, right?
100%.
And that's also the benefit to a new agent coming on a team, because now they get to be with an experienced team that has those processes and systems in
100%.
place so that they can follow, versus trying to go out and figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
It is a big, big world, and there's so many options out there. It's very hard, and I think us as realtors very much have a tendency to have that shiny object syndrome. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? But when you can get with a team that's already done it and figured out a process that works well, and if that aligns with you, you're going to shoot yourself to success so much faster than
Yes.
trying to go it alone.
Oh yeah,
Sorry,
I
Ryan.
can't even imagine
Right?
starting off by yourself and doing it solo.
Right?
Especially now.
Yeah.
Especially in the climate that we're in now. There's just so many different components of, we talked about technology, but technology plays such a huge part. It just makes things, it's so different.
Yeah, everybody's looking online before they call a realtor. So making sure that your listing is showing up really well, making sure that we talked about this too
Yes.
yesterday, that a potential buyer or seller, before they call you, they're going to research you.
Correct.
So how are you showing up? Is your website like rickety and dated, or is
Is
it
there one at all?
right?
Yes.
Right.
Or even, I mean, I shouldn't maybe say this, but I'm going to, but the agent that, again, going back to being prepared, that will call me and say, well, I don't care, you just decide, or you tell me, or you guys always know. It's always, we want 1, 2, 3, ABC. This is what we wanted to say. This is what we want it to look like, because it's your business. You may ask for my input. Well, what do you think, A or B?
Right.
But you're never like, well, you just do it.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to put your personality and flair into it. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, it kind of goes with that. One of my favorite things you guys have done for us is you've taken our logo and made it like, just, I don't know, how do you say that? You tweaked it with
Yeah.
a little bit of holiday flair for
right,
every
like
holiday.
different.
Oh, yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, which is super fun. So we can use it on for anything.
Yeah.
really.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
Christmas and even like, you know,
Yeah. Just
I
the
can't even
different.
think
Different,
right
like
now.
Valentine's,
Yeah, yeah,
or,
yeah.
you know, whatever. We'll
Yeah.
make it, you know, add
Yeah.
a little, like you said, flair to
and it
it.
just helps us continue our branding, but then personalize it a little bit. You know?
Yeah, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
There are some people, I mean, I could go out and run 5 different teams based on,
Yeah. Right.
you know, I mean, not that I want to do that.
No, totally. But
And-
you see what works
Yes.
Correct.
and what doesn't.
And so, but at the end of the day, this is what we do and this is what you guys do.
Totally.
And you do it very well. And like I said, it's all about your systems, your processes, being prepared. And we're just here as a support. And that's what makes a good team.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, but at the same time, I mean, like I said, we don't want to be the ones who are writing all the copy for everything. We don't want to be doing all of the listing appointments.
Yeah.
We don't want to be. And so the fact is, you guys are very well prepared.
Yeah.
You come to us, you know, a month in advance before
Thank
your
you.
events, if not
Yeah.
longer, 3
Yeah.
months in advance.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be done.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it helps to have that yearly planning meeting,
oh yeah.
which is what I would recommend to anybody.
Yeah.
Is every October, November plan for the next year.
Yeah.
And then we even started doing quarterly
Yeah.
planning meetings to just supplement so that we can just make sure we're, you know, breaking that up.
I
Right.
think it's good to like look at what have you done and evaluate it.
What
Did
went
this
well,
work?
right.
Right. Do we want to do that again?
Yeah,
How
'cause-
can we make it better?
Because we've tried things that just didn't hit.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and then we just scrap it. But the ones that did, we do all the time, every
Right.
year.
Yeah, I think I think that, you know, everyone tries things that don't work out.
Yeah.
And then,
It's okay.
you know,
Move on.
what are your best events though?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, so many.
I think the cornhole is obviously really good.
Yeah.
That has become, we kind of joke around about it, how hard that is because it's so much work to put it together.
It's so much work.
I mean, it's tough, but it's so rewarding at
It
the
is.
end.
Yeah.
And
It's
we'll
an
talk more
amazing-
about that soon.
Yeah.
And how this one went this year. But our food drive is huge.
Yes.
You know? And that's, I feel like we could probably get better at bringing more community members in to help with some of that stuff and not have to do all of it ourselves. Our families, of course, are huge, right, for that. But I mean, what else?
Yeah, I think, the big ones are always fun, but sometimes the smaller ones are really fun too,
Yeah.
like more intimate, one-on-one. I love our bouquets and brews.
That was so fun.
Right?
Yeah.
For all the guys.
Yeah. Ryan doesn't like me giving away our secrets. He likes to keep that one
That
close to the...
you know, it's okay. That's a good one though.
I just remembered though your first cornhole event.
Yeah.
And
Compared to now?
Yeah.
Compared to now. I literally just thought of how
It was
much
so small.
it has. Yeah.
Yeah, we made $2,000 on that, and it was at one of our clients'
The house,
houses
right?
that just volunteered to host it. And they were just regular boards, I think. I can't even remember.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Now it's
So
a
it's
big old
fun.
thing.
But that's, to that point, that's why it's important to look back and evaluate and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what could we do better, take notes on those things. And also, that's another, again, benefit to being on the team. Nick, who just joined, he gets to participate in that and be a part of something that's a very well-oiled machine.
Right.
And that just makes his job so much easier.
Well, and there's an immense amount of credibility that comes with it too. I mean, I remember when I joined the team, I'd never sold a house. I literally had my license for a couple months, didn't know what I was doing. And the team that I was on was dissolving and I didn't even know it. So as soon as I joined, I could say, we are the #1 team in Gilbert.
Right.
And to this day, I've never had anyone ask me how many homes I've sold. Not one time.
You haven't?
And I was shocked that they didn't ask me immediately that first time. They never did.
But he can say we.
Yes, I can say we.
Yes.
But then I also, and I don't like the make it till you, or fake it till you make it thing, but I just acted like it wasn't my first one. And I wasn't being dishonest. I just made the decision. I'm going to have confidence because I know what we're doing.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing, right? And it worked out great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
teams are huge. Like and really beyond the team, it's just finding the right people.
Yeah.
It could be one person that is going to pour into you and help you get to their level if they're willing to do it, and that relationship is there.
Yeah.
And it creates so much leverage for you guys as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, do you want to talk about the leverage that you're connected to?
You know what? That's why I created the team.
Yeah.
About 5.5 years ago now.
Yeah.
It just helped, having done this for so long. I mean, obviously there's a natural, I don't want to say burnout that goes along with it, but you just need to get a little bit more help, a little bit more leverage. And so it was COVID, right? And I mean, everybody was just going through a little bit of, we were all working so hard. And Ashley, who's my teammate partner, came and she had started working for the company. And
I remember that.
yeah, she had started working and she had actually come on as a sales rep. It was going to be really hard for her to, I don't want to say make it, she knows this. It was going to be really hard because we were all working from home or working, remote. And she said, can I come work with you? And I said, I would love that. I mean, who doesn't love Ashley?
Yeah.
And so she came in and worked with me and I said, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I said, we're going to call ourselves the A-Team.
love
Angela
it.
and Ashley. And
Love
it's
it.
not unique by any means.
Yeah.
We are very familiar that it is not unique. But at the time we were both working so hard. I said, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And so we called ourselves the A-Team. And now we have another person who works with us. We have the whole VA team that works with us who helps us on the back end. And it's worked out really well for us.
Yeah.
And she brings something to the team that I don't. She's obviously younger than I am. And not that but she just connects with a whole different generation. And so, like I said, she just brings something. And so it just works out for us.
Yeah.
We're just,
She's awesome. And I love that you guys work so well together.
Yeah.
It's like so nice because you're busy and so you can't always be at everything or present. And so she can step in and she does such a great job. And we know that we can reach out to her with anything, and she's super responsive. So
She's amazing. And I really just, like I said, her energy is so phenomenal. She's always so happy.
Very service oriented.
Very service oriented.
Yes.
She just, the way that she connects with people is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that she couldn't be here today. She's out, I think I told you she had some bachelorette party.
yeah.
But she's just great. She just brings a different energy to everything.
Yeah.
And so, but I love the fact that we've made it last and
Yeah.
made it work. And I don't see either one of us going anywhere anytime soon.
Love it.
So I love her. And
Yeah.
like I said, we've added someone else to the team. And then we have our whole virtually by design that services us in the back end. And
Yeah.
so that's going well too.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Angela, what didn't we ask you that we should have asked you?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think. What,
How can someone reach you? If someone's listening and they're thinking, hey, I either have an interest or maybe I can work with her and she can help me with my real estate business, how can they find you?
I think ateam@magnustitle.com. Just ateam@magnustitle.com. You can reach me, Ashley, Chandler, the rest of the team, and we're happy to help in any way that we can,
Thank you.
however we can serve.
Well, we like to end with a speed round. Are you up for like rapid fire questions?
Oh,
Just first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
It's easy.
Sure.
We'll start easy.
Yeah.
What's your favorite color?
Orange.
Favorite food?
Fettuccine Alfredo.
Oh, favorite drink?
Oh, iced coffee.
Okay.
Or cold brew. Sorry, cold brew.
Okay. Do you have a favorite sound?
Oh, no. Silence.
Right? No sound.
Right?
What about a favorite book?
Oh, right now I'm reading Let Them.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if it's my favorite, but I'm quite enjoying it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Do you have a favorite podcast?
I'm listening to one right now, but I don't know if I should say it.
What? Okay.
Well, yeah.
okay.
I'll tell you off the air.
Okay, okay. I bet I know what it's about. Anyways, okay, last but not least, do you have a favorite vacation?
Yes. Gosh, I get Punta Cana.
Punta Cana,
Oh, yeah.
the Dominican Republic.
No, the other one, Punta Mita. Punta
Oh,
Mita.
okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I always get the two.
Yeah.
Punta
Yeah.
Mita,
What was
Mexico.
so awesome
Okay.
about that one?
It was the first time I flew private. Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was amazing.
Yeah, I bet. Well, thanks for being with us, Angela. Thanks for sharing. And I would highly encourage anyone listening that's in the real estate world to reach out to Angela. She's amazing. I think she's the best. So
Thank you.
thanks for
Thank you guys
watching.
for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Real Deal podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe, and you can follow us on social media at the Home Selling Team AZ.